everyone, my name is Jamie Adams, and this is my research proposal presentation. My study will be over heritability of behaviors and interests in identical twins. I'm an identical twin myself, so twins have always kind of been a huge part of my life and have always fascinated me. So my study will actually include 30 pairs of twins, half of which were adopted and the other half have always lived together and with their biological family. The half that were adopted weren't adopted together, they were actually adopted separately. However, they were adopted through an open adoption. The twins did know that they were twins as they got older, but not at an incredibly young age. So the open adoption is important because if it wasn't an open adoption, we wouldn't be able to use them into our study. So that's something that we kind of discussed briefly on in class through our discussions. But I do think it's important to note that they were all involved in an open adoption. So not only are we testing just the twins that are involved, we must test the biological and adoptive parents as well. So we will compare the results from the test that we give, which I'll go over in a slide or two. We'll compare those results and compare the responses that they gave, and determine the heritability of certain behaviors and interests. So we'll be studying two types of interests. So personal interests, so their hobbies, things that they choose to do in their personal time, and career interests, so things that they want to do ideally for the rest of their life. So things, do they like using data? Do they like using tools and machinery? That sort of thing. So that's what the career inventory will actually help us to learn. The study of twins actually is really important and provides a dynamic way of exploring the whole nature versus nurture issue. So this will actually show us, hopefully through ideas of what behaviors and what interests are heritable. So, for instance, if one of the adopted twins shows, nearly the same career interests as their biological parent, really the only reasoning behind that could be that it is genetic, it is embedded in them, that they were almost predisposed to have those interests, to have a similar interest in that field. Of course, behaviors are also something that can be learned from their adoptive parents. So if their adoptive parents are, clean, they love to clean and keep the house spotless all the time, that is something that they learned to do. So they learned to develop those skills and to keep the house clean based on what they've been exposed to. So those are just kind of some of the ideas and some of the things that will be tested during this research. So in my proposal, I will be testing for heritability of behaviors and interests, and to determine the behaviors, I will conduct a behavioral assessment on each individual. So each twin and each parent, whether they be biological or adoptive, will be assessed as individuals, so as to not have the twins sit side by side and kind of feed off of each other, and to kind of expose the same interests and behaviors just because the other is sitting there. So that kind of eliminates some of those issues that could occur with that. The interests will actually be determined by two inventories. Like I said, we'll be doing one inventory that will determine personal interests and another inventory that will determine career interests. So the results will then just be compared to their counterparts. So the adopted twins will be compared to their adoptive parents and their biological parents, and will ideally allow us to determine if those interests and behaviors are more or less similar to either set of parents. So I also want to go back and touch base about the open adoption again. Like I said, it is necessary for a study like this to to make sure that we have a true comparison. So if we weren't able to actually have contact with the biological parent, it'd make it really hard for us to really determine if something is heritable or not. So if we only compared the twin to the adoptive parent, we would have no idea if those results were actually indicative of genetic relevance or just environmental circumstance in general. Previous research has been conducted in order to help determine a lot of things that are heritable or determining if they are heritable. So they've done research on aggression and autism. But they've also done a lot of research on personality. That's something that they've done quite a bit of evidence supporting the influence of genetic factors on personality. So since personality has been studied by numerous amounts of researchers, and it is important and shows individuality, behaviors and interests can be indicatively strong in showing true heritability. So they can really help to solidify what is actually heritable and what is just based on environmental circumstance. So my hypothesis is that the adopted twins will actually share similar career interests with their biological parents rather than their adoptive parents. So I do think that there is something kind of built in to us um, that kind of tells us what we're interested in doing. And it's also something that just kind of comes from our our lives and our family's lives, regardless if we are involved into those lives or are aware of what what our parents do or what our grandparents did. Um, and I think that that's something that, like I said, is just something innate in us, something that we don't realize is there, but really is. So I think, like, for instance, I am not only my twin, but my twin and I are actually the two youngest of 5 siblings. Um, and at the moment, obviously, this isn't my career path, but at the moment, um, there are 4 of us, all 4 of us girls, who are working in a restaurant and seeking management positions. So one of my sisters is a manager at a restaurant downtown in Lexington. One of my sisters is a regional manager of local Subway restaurants. And I am currently a manager at Outback, and then my twin sister is actually seeking a management position in another restaurant. So it's kind of interesting to think that we've all kind of, you know, aimed towards or geared toward the same field, whether that be for a lifetime or a lifelong career, is something that is still similar in each of us. And there's a pretty big age gap between us and our oldest sister. So, it wasn't really something that we saw her doing or anything like that. So I think that those kind of things are very interesting. And I also hypothesize that the twins will also share will share personal interests and behaviors with the parents whom they have spent the majority of their life with. So I think that personal interests come from personal interests and behaviors come from observing, and being exposed to things. So uh, maybe maybe one of the twins is actually more interested in gymnastics, and they were exposed to this by their adoptive parents. But perhaps if they were with their biological parents, they wouldn't have been exposed to gymnastics. So maybe they would have been more exposed to basketball or softball. So softball, baseball. It's interesting to think that just by living with different types of people, different parents, that our interests can really be affected by that and our behavior. So say that our adoptive mother crosses her legs all the time, so I see her do that and I think that it's classy. I think that I really admire the way that she does that. So I begin to cross my legs as I grow up. So, those are things that are observable, and those are the things that we, kind of reflect onto ourselves. So I do think that those the personal interests and the behaviors will be something that they'll be more similar to their parents who they have spent most of their time with, not necessarily the ones who they share DNA with. I also think it's important to recognize that not only are we are primarily testing the similarities between the child and the parent, but it's also interesting to think, or to it's also important to want to compare and see how similar the twins are. So they're separated, they live in separate lives, and they're supposed to, they're cut from the same cloth in a sense. So, they definitely are going to hopefully share um, similar outlook, similar behavior, similar interests, just because they share, their DNA. Their DNA is most similar to each other than will be to anyone else, even their parents. So I think that's really important. And I'll talk about that a little more when we talk about the future proposal or future research. So the actual results that I obtained were that the twins did, in fact, resemble their biological parents more when it comes to their career interests, but seem to identify most with their parent that they spent their childhood with. So they resembled their biological parents as far as their career interests go, but they identified better with their the parent who they spent the most time with. So whether that be the adoptive parent, or in the circumstances where the twins lived with their biological parents, of course they express those as well because that is what they know. So this is just mostly due to what they're exposed to and just kind of what they're familiar with. So if they're in networking as well, so we use our parents to kind of network and to let us meet people and let us build those careers. So, if I'm 16 looking for my first job, they're probably going to go to my mother and ask her if she knows of anyone hiring. So if she happens to get me into a bank, working with a bank, I might later find that I really enjoyed that just because of that experience. So that's just kind of an important thing to also to take into account. The twins also seem to exude behaviors most similar to the parents they spent time with. So like I said earlier, they observe those behaviors and they're going to most likely reflect those back onto themselves. Um, However, the separated twins did ultimately show underlying behaviors that suggest that although the twins have not spent their lives together, they have some innate behaviors in them that are displayed similarly to one another. So, that can be small things such as when they do cross their legs, like I mentioned earlier, maybe they always cross right over left when their adoptive parents actually cross left over right. Um, I know that seems kind of small and kind of, silly, but those are some of the underlying behaviors that could be seen in that. So something that's kind of unique to them that they still exhibit regardless of, you know, circumstances and what they've been exposed to. So my suggestion to future research is that they should just focus more on the implications and similarities in the separated twins. So um, being able to access that that kind of information and that kind of a quantity of separated twins is really difficult. But if you're able to get those group of people and to just compare them to each other, just the twins, so just living separate lives and compare and see how similar um, or dissimilar that they may be. I think that would be a very interesting article and very beneficial article. I also think that they should identify specific behaviors that could potentially be heritable and others that may be learned. So being able to identify, um, behaviors such as, when they talk, do they talk with their hands? And being able to definitively say that that is something that is 98% likely due to genetics or likely due to just lifestyle lifestyle circumstances and experiences and things that they've observed. So that's just kind of my implications and what I think that future research definitely could do with studies like this, but still focusing on behaviors and some of the interests that they may have.